The morning started like any other in Seoul. People walked to work. Children ran to school. Buses moved through busy streets. Yuna stood on the roof of the military building, drinking her coffee and watching the city wake up. She was 32 years old and had served in the Korean Defense Force for 10 years. Life was normal. Life was peaceful. Then the sky cracked open. At first, Yuna thought it was lightning. A bright line appeared in the clouds, stretching from one end of the horizon to the other. But lightning does not stay in the sky. This light grew brighter and wider until the clouds themselves seemed to burn away. Ships came through the crack, hundreds of them. They were long and silver, shaped like needles, and they moved without sound. Yuna dropped her coffee cup. It shattered on the concrete, but she did not hear it. She could only stare at the impossible things floating above her city. Her phone rang. It was her brother, Taiho. "Yuna, are you seeing this?" His voice was shaking. "I see it. Where are you?" "At the school. I was dropping off my daughter." Taiho was a teacher. He loved children more than anything in the world. "Yuna, what are those things?" Before she could answer, the ships began to glow. Beams of white light shot down from their bellies, touching the ground in different parts of the city. Where the light touched, everything disappeared. Buildings, cars, people. They did not explode or burn. They simply stopped existing, leaving behind circles of empty ground. Yuna watched a beam erase an entire apartment building in less than a second. Thousands of people lived there. Now there was nothing but flat earth. "Run," she whispered into the phone. "Taiho, take the children and run." She could hear screaming through the phone. Children crying. Taiho shouting orders to stay calm. Then a sound like thunder, and the line went dead. Yuna ran down the stairs, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her chest. She grabbed a rifle from the weapons room and sprinted outside. The streets were chaos. People ran in every direction, but there was nowhere safe to go. The beams fell everywhere, erasing blocks of the city, like a child wiping away drawings on paper. She found her mother near the old market. Suman was 60 years old, a retired nurse who still volunteered at the local hospital every week. She was helping an injured man when Yuna reached her. "Mother, we have to go." Suman looked up. Her face was calm, the way it always was during emergencies. She had seen death many times in her life, but even she could not hide the fear in her eyes when she looked at the sky. "There is nowhere to go, my daughter." A beam touched down 3 streets away. The light was so bright that Yuna had to cover her eyes. When she opened them, her mother was gone. The injured man was gone. Half the street was gone. Yuna stood alone on the edge of a perfect circle of emptiness. She did not scream. She did not cry. Something inside her simply broke and then rebuilt itself into something harder. The same thing was happening across the world. New York vanished under silver ships. Mumbai burned. Cairo crumbled. Lagos went silent. In less than 3 days, the ships killed 4 billion people. Half of humanity erased like dust from a table. When the killing stopped, the survivors crawled out from hiding places. Yuna found her way to Bizan, where the military had set up an emergency command. She learned that Taiho had died at the school. He had gathered 30 children in the basement and covered them with his own body when the beam hit. The children survived. Taiho did not. Admiral Dong-soo was the highest-ranking officer left alive in Korea. He was 60 years old, a quiet man who had spent his career behind a desk. Now he stood in the ruins of his country, surrounded by broken soldiers and crying civilians. The aliens finally showed themselves. On the 4th day, a single ship landed in what used to be Central Seoul. A door opened, and a creature walked out. It was tall, nearly 3 meters, and its body was made of smooth silver metal. It had no face, only a flat surface that reflected everything around it like a mirror. "We are the collective," the creature announced. Its voice came from everywhere at once, speaking in every language. "We have completed the 17th refinement of your species. Your population has been optimized for sustainable growth. You will recover. You will breed. In 50 years, we will return to refine you again. This is the natural order." Una stood in the crowd, her hands gripping her rifle. She wanted to shoot the creature, but she knew it would do nothing. Their weapons were toys compared to the power of those ships. Admiral Dong Su stepped forward. He was limping. He had lost his left leg during the attack, and the wound was still fresh. "You have done this before," he said. His voice was quiet but steady. "How many times?" 17 cycles, the creature replied. "Your species is efficient at reproduction. You should be grateful that we maintain balance. Without our refinement, you would consume all resources and destroy yourselves." "Grateful?" Dong Su laughed. It was not a happy sound. "You just killed half our people. Refinement is necessary. You are young. You do not understand. I understand perfectly." Dong Su looked at the survivors around him. Mothers who had lost children, children who had lost parents, soldiers who had watched their friends disappear. All of them were broken. All of them were angry. "You see us as animals," Dong Su continued, "cattle to be managed. You think this slaughter will make us obedient, as it always has. Your compliance is expected. It is the pattern of all refined species." Dong Su nodded slowly. Then he straightened his back, ignoring the pain in his leg, and looked directly at the creature's mirror face. "There will not be an 18th refinement." The creature tilted its head. "You cannot stop us. You are primitive. You have no ships, no weapons that matter. In 50 years, we will return, and you will be harvested again. Maybe," Dong Su said. "Or maybe you just made the biggest mistake in your history." "What mistake?" Dong Su smiled. It was cold and hard and full of something the creature had never seen before. "You left survivors." The creature studied him for a long moment. Then it turned and walked back to its ship without another word. The ship rose into the sky and disappeared through the crack in the clouds. The crack closed behind it, leaving only gray sky and silence. Una lowered her rifle. She looked at Admiral Dong Su, at the other survivors, at the ruins of her world. Her mother was dead. Her brother was dead. Her old life was dead, but she was still alive. And as she stood there in the ashes, she made a promise to herself. She would make them pay. The world after the refinement was a quiet place. Cities lay in ruins. Governments had fallen. The 4 billion people who survived wandered through the ashes like ghosts, searching for food, shelter, and reasons to keep living. But humans are strange creatures. They do not stay broken for long. Within 6 months, the survivors began to organize. Old borders stopped mattering. Korean and Japanese, American and Russian, Indian and Pakistani. These old enemies looked at each other and realized something simple. None of that mattered anymore. They were all human. They were all prey. And if they did not work together, they would all die in the next refinement. The Terran Unified Command was born in a bunker beneath the mountains of Switzerland. Representatives from every surviving nation gathered there, sitting around a long table made from scrap metal. They argued for 3 days straight. They shouted. They threatened. They blamed each other for failures that no longer mattered. Then Admiral Dong Su stood up. He was in a wheelchair now. His wound had become infected, and the doctors had been forced to remove more of his leg. But his voice was still strong. "We can fight each other," he said, "or we can fight them. Choose." The room went silent. One by one, the representatives nodded. Humanity chose to fight. Dr. Yunji, was not supposed to be important. She was a physicist who had worked at a small university in Daejeon. Her specialty was theoretical energy systems, things that might not be useful for another 100 years. Most people thought her work was boring, but Yoonji had survived the refinement by hiding in her laboratory's basement. And when she emerged, she found something that changed everything. A collective scout ship had crashed in the mountains nearby. Its crew was dead, killed by the impact. But the ship's computer was still working. Yoonji spent 2 weeks pulling data from its systems, teaching herself the alien language one word at a time. What she found made her sick. She brought her discovery to the Unified Command. "They have been watching us for thousands of years," she told the council. Her hand shook as she showed them the files. They did not just arrive. They have always been here. The data told a terrible story. Every time humanity got close to a major breakthrough, something stopped them. Wars started at convenient moments. Scientists died in strange accidents. Funding for important research disappeared. Governments made decisions that seemed stupid, but actually served the collective's purposes. The Black Death, Yoonji said. The World Wars. The collapse of ancient civilizations. They caused all of it. They wanted to keep us weak. Smart enough to breed, but never smart enough to threaten them. General HFY slammed his fist on the table. He was a big man with burn scars covering half his face. He had watched his entire battalion vanish in a single beam strike. "They have been farming us," he growled. "Like animals." "Yes," Yoonji said. "For 17 cycles. That is over 800 years. Every 50 years, they harvest us. And every time, they make sure we cannot advance far enough to fight back." The room erupted in angry shouts. Some people did not believe it. Others were too angry to speak. But Admiral Dong-Soo just sat quietly, thinking. What happened to the species that did advance? He asked. The ones who got too smart before the refinement? Yoonji's face went pale. They were erased completely. The collective does not allow threats to exist. "So we are lucky," Dong-Soo said. "They think we are still too primitive to matter." "For now," Yoonji agreed. "But their scouts will return. They always monitor refined worlds between cycles. If they see us building weapons, if they see us advancing too quickly, they will destroy us before the next refinement." HFY stood up. "Then we hide. We go underground. We build in secret. For 50 years?" Someone asked. "We cannot hide an entire civilization for 50 years. "We can if we are smart about it," Dong-Soo said. He looked around the room at the tired, angry faces. "They expect us to collapse. They expect chaos and war and starvation. Let them see that. Let them think they broke us. And while they watch us suffer on the surface," HFY asked. Dong-Soo smiled. "We build something they have never seen before. Something that will make them regret leaving survivors." The plan was simple but insane. Humanity would fake its own collapse. On the surface, the world would look exactly as the collective expected. Broken nations fighting over scraps. Primitive technology. A dying species too weak to threaten anyone. But beneath the surface, everything would be different. Over the next 5 years, the Unified Command built a network of underground cities. They used the alien data that Yoonji had stolen to understand the collective's technology. They reverse-engineered everything they could find. They made mistakes. Many people died in failed experiments. But they kept working. Yoonji led the science teams. She barely slept. She forgot to eat. Her colleagues worried about her health, but she refused to slow down. "Every hour I waste is an hour they use to plan our next slaughter," she told them. "I will rest when they are dead." The first breakthrough came in year 7. A young engineer named Mai Ray figured out how to improve the collective's energy systems. The aliens used a certain type of reactor that was powerful but limited. Myre found a way to make it 3 times stronger. "It is not elegant," she admitted, showing her design to the council. "It is ugly and dangerous. But it works." "Ugly and dangerous is perfect," Hyok said. "We are not trying to impress them. We are trying to kill them." More breakthroughs followed. Weapons, shields, ship designs. Humanity took everything the collective had given them and made it worse in the best possible way. Worse as in more violent, more unpredictable, more human. The collective's technology was refined over thousands of years. It was efficient and clean and followed logical rules. Human technology was a mess of improvisation and desperate creativity. It should not have worked. But somehow, it did. 20 years after the refinement, Earth went completely dark. Every satellite stopped transmitting. Every radio signal went silent. To anyone watching from space, it looked like humanity had finally destroyed itself. The collective scouts came to check. They scanned the surface and saw exactly what they expected. Ruined cities. Scattered survivors fighting over food. A primitive species that had learned its lesson. They did not look beneath the mountains. They did not scan the deep tunnels. They did not notice the millions of people working in secret factories, building weapons that would shake the galaxy. The scouts left, satisfied that their cattle were behaving properly. They had no idea what was coming. Admiral Dong-Su watched the scout ships leave from a command center buried a kilometer underground. He was old now, his hair white and his body failing. But his eyes still burned with the same fire that had kept him alive through the refinement. "How long until we are ready?" he asked. Yoonji checked her displays. "Another 30 years. Maybe 25 if we push hard. Then we push hard." Dong-Su turned to face the massive screen showing Earth's hidden military strength. Thousands of ships in various stages of construction. Millions of soldiers training in underground facilities. An entire civilization preparing for war. "They gave us 50 years, he said quietly. "Let us show them what humans can do with 50 years of anger." Jisoo was born in the tunnels. She had never seen the sun until she was 12 years old, and even then, it was only through a tiny hole in a mountain wall. Her mother had died giving birth to her. Her father worked in the weapons factory until a reactor accident took him when she was 7. She was raised by the community, like most children of her generation. They called themselves the Forged. Children born after the refinement, raised with a single purpose: to fight. Jisoo's earliest memory was learning to shoot. She was 4 years old, barely tall enough to hold the training rifle. Her instructor was an old woman named Yuna, a commander who had survived the refinement and now trained the next generation of soldiers. "Why do we fight?" Yuna asked the children every morning. "Because they killed our families," the children answered together. "Why do we train?" "Because revenge requires strength." "What do we fear?" "Only dying before we make them pay." This was their morning prayer. This was their reason for living. Jisoo was a natural soldier. She could shoot better than adults by age 10. She understood tactics and strategy by 12. By 15, she was leading her own training squad and teaching younger children how to survive. But she was also curious. She spent her free hours in the library archives, reading about the old world. She learned about countries and borders and wars between humans. She read about music and art and sports. All these things seemed strange and wonderful to her, like fairy tales from a different universe. People used to fight each other over land, she told her friend Hanyul one night. They were sitting in the barracks, sharing a meal of protein paste and recycled water. "Can you imagine? Killing other humans over dirt?" Hanyul shrugged. He was a pilot trainee, quick with his hands and fearless in the simulators. People were stupid back then. They did not know what real enemies looked like. "Maybe they were not stupid," Jisoo said. Maybe they were just lucky. They had the luxury of fighting small wars. Well, we do not have that luxury. Haniel smiled grimly. We only get one war, and we have to win it. Engineer Mireille worked 20 hours a day for 30 years. She designed the first interstellar warship when she was 32. By 50, she had designed an entire fleet. Now, at 62, she was putting the final touches on humanity's greatest weapon. They called it the Unbroken. The ship was ugly. Mireille was the first to admit it. Collective vessels were smooth and beautiful, like sculptures made of light. The Unbroken looked like someone had welded together scrap metal from 100 different sources. Because that was exactly what they had done. Beauty is for species that have time to waste. Mireille told the engineering teams. We build things that work. And the Unbroken worked. Its engines could outrun any collective ship. Its weapons could crack open their strongest armor. Its shields could absorb punishment that would destroy anything the aliens had built. The secret was human stubbornness. The collective designed their ships to be efficient. Every system had a purpose. Nothing was wasted. But human engineers asked different questions. They asked, what if we push this past its limits? What if we make it do things it was never meant to do? The Unbroken's reactor was overcharged by 40%. By collective standards, this was insane. The ship should have exploded the first time they turned it on. But human engineers had figured out ways to manage the extra power, channeling it through systems that no alien would ever think to use. It is like the difference between a trained soldier and a wild animal, Mireille explained to Admiral Dong-Su during the final inspection. Their ships follow rules. Ours do not. Dong-Su was very old now. He had to be carried to the inspection in a special chair. His body was failing, but his mind was still sharp. Will it be enough? He asked. Mireille hesitated. I do not know. We have never actually fought them. All our simulations are based on stolen data and guesses. But you believe we can win? Mireille looked at the Unbroken, at the dozens of other ships lined up in the massive underground hangar. 30 years of work. Millions of lives dedicated to this moment. I believe we can hurt them, she said. And sometimes that is enough. Commander Yuna was 72 years old when the collective scouts returned. Her hair was white, her body was covered in old scars, and she walked with a cane. But she still trained soldiers every day. She had personally taught over 3,000 fighters, including Jisoo. The scouts came without warning, appearing in Earth's orbit like they always did. They scanned the surface and saw the same broken world they had seen for decades. But this time, something was different. One scout ship flew too close to a mountain in what used to be Argentina. A hidden defense platform activated automatically, firing a single missile. The scout ship exploded before its crew could even understand what had happened. Alarms screamed through the underground command center. Admiral Dong-Su, now confined to a bed surrounded by medical machines, watched the screens with tired eyes. They know, General Hayok said. He had taken over military operations years ago. One of their ships is destroyed. They will send more. How long until the rest of our fleet is ready? Dong-Su asked. 6 months for full readiness. But we can launch what we have now. Dong-Su closed his eyes. 6 months was not enough time. But waiting was no longer an option. Launch everything, he ordered, and send a message to the other scouts. The message was simple. It was carved into the hull of the destroyed scout ship's wreckage and left floating in Earth's orbit for the collective to find. The message said, "We're done being refined." Within hours, the galaxy knew. The collective sent urgent transmissions to every corner of their empire. A refined species was resisting. Humanity was fighting back. Some alien species laughed at the news. Others were terrified. A few, The ones who had been refined themselves long ago felt something they had not felt in centuries. Hope. Captain Jisoo received her assignment 3 days later. She was now 28 years old, a veteran of countless training exercises and simulations. She had never fought a real battle. None of them had. "You will lead Fire Wing 7, Yuna told her. The old commander's eyes were filled with pride and worry. "You will protect the Unbroken during the battle." "We will not fail," Jisoo said. "No," Yuna agreed. "You will not, because failure means extinction." She put her hand on Jisoo's shoulder. "I have trained you for this moment your entire life. Everything I know, everything I have learned, is inside you now. What if it is not enough?" Yuna smiled. It was the same cold, hard smile that Admiral Dong-Su had shown the alien emissary 30 years ago. "Then make it enough." That is what humans do. We take what we have and we make it enough. The fleet launched at midnight. 200 ships rose from hidden hangars all over the planet, joining together in Earth's orbit. They were a strange sight, ugly and mismatched, nothing like the elegant vessels of the collective, but they were human. And they were angry. Admiral Dong-Su watched the launch from his medical bed. He knew he would not survive to see the end of the battle. His body was too weak, but he had done his part. He had turned a broken species into an army. Now it was time for the next generation to finish what he had started. The collective's response came faster than anyone expected. 300 warships appeared at the edge of the solar system, more firepower than humanity had ever seen in one place. They moved in perfect formation, each ship exactly where it should be, following tactics refined over 10,000 years of galactic conquest. Admiral Dong-Su watched them approach from the bridge of the Unbroken. He was dying. Everyone knew it. The medical team had wanted to keep him in the hospital, but he had refused. "I did not spend 30 years preparing for this war to watch it on a screen," he had said. "Put me on that ship, or I will crawl there myself." So they had bolted his wheelchair to the command platform. Tubes connected him to machines that kept his heart beating. His hands could barely move, but his voice was still strong. "All ships," he broadcast to the fleet. "This is Admiral Dong-Su. Today, we stop being prey." 200 human ships faced 300 collective warships. The math was simple. The humans were going to lose, but the collective did not understand. Human math thought the first wave of collective ships moved forward, expecting the humans to retreat or surrender. Instead, the human fleet charged directly at them. No formation, no pattern, just chaos. "What are they doing?" the collective admiral demanded from his flagship. He was an ancient being, a creature of crystalline thought who had commanded fleets for centuries. He had refined dozens of species. He had never seen anything like this. Human ships crashed into collective vessels, deliberately ramming them. Pilots ejected at the last second, floating in the void while their ships exploded against enemy hulls. Others did not eject at all, riding their vessels to destruction with weapons firing until the final moment. "They are insane," the collective admiral said. He was not wrong. Captain Jisoo led Fighter Wing 7 through the chaos. A small ship twisted and spun, dodging energy beams that would vaporize her in an instant. She had trained for this her entire life, but nothing could prepare her for real combat. "Wing 7, stay on me," she shouted into her communicator. "Target the big ship's engines." A collective carrier loomed ahead, larger than anything Jisoo had ever seen. Its weapons were destroying human ships by the dozen. But Myre had found a weakness in the design. The engine ports were vulnerable during cooldown cycles. Jisoo waited, counting the seconds between the carrier's movements. There. The engines dimmed for just a moment. Now. 7 fighters fired together. Their missiles were small, almost harmless compared to the carrier's size. but they hit the engine ports at exactly the right moment. Fire erupted inside the ship. Secondary explosions tore through its hull. The carrier went dark and began to drift. "Wing 7, direct hit!" Jisoo screamed with joy. Then her screen flashed with warnings. "Break formation. Incoming." Collective fighters swarmed toward them. Jisoo wings scattered, each pilot fighting for survival. She watched 2 of her friends die in the first 10 seconds. Then 3 more. By the time she broke free of the attack, she was alone. "Wing 7, report." She called static. She was the only one left. On the Unbroken, Admiral Dong-Soo watched the battle with calm eyes. The humans were losing. He had known they would. But they were also winning in ways that mattered more. "How many of their ships have we destroyed?" he asked. 47 confirmed kills, Hayok reported. "We have lost 83, but we hurt them." "Yes, sir. We hurt them badly." Dong-Soo nodded. The collective had expected to crush humanity without any losses. Instead, they were bleeding. And bleeding changed things. "Order the second phase," Dong-Soo said. The asteroid belt at the edge of the solar system had been humanity's secret weapon. For 20 years, engineers had been placing charges on the largest rocks, turning them into giant missiles. Now, with a single command, those charges activated. 50 asteroids began to move, accelerating toward the collective fleet. They were not fast. The aliens would see them coming. But they were big, and there were many of them. "They cannot shoot down all of them," Myrae said from her station. "The math does not work." The collective fleet tried anyway. Energy beams lashed out, destroying asteroid after asteroid. But for every rock they shattered, 2 more kept coming. And while they focused on the asteroids, human ships attacked from every direction. The battle turned into slaughter. Not for humans, but for the collective. Jisoo found herself alone near the collective flagship. Her ship was damaged, barely functional. She should have retreated. Instead, she pushed forward. "One ship is not going to make a difference," she told herself. Then she remembered Yuna's words. "Make it enough." She aimed her broken fighter at the flagship's bridge and fired her engines at the last moment. She ejected. Her seat shot out into space as her ship crashed through the flagship's windows. The explosion was small, barely a flash, but it was enough to crack the bridge's hull. Jisoo floated in the void, watching emergency lights flicker on the flagship. Air was escaping. Alarms were sounding. And then she saw something that made her heart stop. A maintenance hatch was opening. Someone was trying to seal the breach from outside. Without thinking, Jisoo activated her suit's thrusters and flew toward the hatch. She pulled herself inside just before it closed. She was inside the enemy flagship. She had no weapons except a plasma cutter, a tool meant for repairs. She had no plan. But she was human, and humans did not need plans. They just needed anger. Jisoo moved through the ship's corridors, hiding from patrols, following signs she could barely read. The alien language was strange, but Yoonji had taught her the basics years ago. She found her way to the command bridge. The door opened, and she stepped inside. The collective admiral turned to face her. He was taller than any being she had ever seen, his body made of something that looked like living glass. His mind was older than human civilization. He had watched species rise and fall across 1,000 worlds, and for the first time in his long existence, he felt fear. "What are you?" he demanded. Jisoo raised her plasma cutter. It was a pitiful weapon, barely able to cut through metal, but she held it like a sword. "I'm human," she said, "and we are done being cattle." She attacked. The admiral moved to defend himself, but he was too slow. He had never fought a physical battle. His species had evolved beyond such primitive things. But evolution had not prepared him for a creature willing to die to kill him. The plasma cutter burned through his chest. He screamed, a sound that shattered glass throughout the bridge. Then he fell, and the command center went dark. Outside, the collective fleet received the news. Their admiral was dead, killed by a single human who had crawled through their defenses with nothing but a cutting tool. The fleet panicked. For the first time in 10,000 years, the collective retreated. On the unbroken, Admiral Dong-Su smiled. His eyes were closing. His heart was finally giving out. But he had seen enough. "We won," he whispered. Those were his last words. The Battle of Seoul lasted 11 days. When it ended, the collective had lost over 200 ships. Humanity had lost 150. It was not a clean victory. Both sides had been devastated, but the humans were still fighting. And the collective was running. For the first time in recorded galactic history, a refined species had fought back. And they had won. The news spread through the galaxy like fire. On 1,000 worlds, in 100 languages, the same story was told. A primitive species called humanity had defeated the collective in open battle. The masters could bleed. The gods could die. Jisoo woke up in a hospital bed 3 weeks after the battle. She had nearly died from injuries she did not even remember receiving. Her body was covered in burn scars. Her left eye was gone, replaced with a mechanical implant that let her see in ways natural eyes never could. Yuna was sitting beside her bed, waiting. "You are awake," the old commander said. Her voice was soft. She looked older than Jisoo had ever seen her, but there was something new in her eyes. "Peace, satisfaction. The Admiral?" Jisoo asked. Her throat was raw. Dong-Su died during the battle, but he saw us win. He died happy. Jisoo closed her eyes. She had never known the Admiral well. He'd always been a distant figure, a legend from the old world. But she understood what he meant to everyone. He had given them purpose. He had turned survivors into soldiers. What happens now? Yuna smiled. Now we finish what he started. The funeral for Admiral Dong-Su was held on the surface, in the ruins of Seoul. It was the first time most people had been above ground in decades. The sun felt strange. The wind felt wrong. But they stood there anyway, millions of survivors watching as his body was burned according to tradition. His final words were carved into a monument of black stone. Never again. Never forgive. Never forget. Dr. Yoonji broadcast humanity's declaration to the galaxy that same day. She was old now, her hair gray and her hands wrinkled. But her voice was strong as she spoke to every world with the technology to listen. For centuries, we were told we were primitive. We were told our place was beneath you, livestock to be managed, culled, refined. We accepted it because we did not know any better. Now we do. On distant worlds, species that had been refined long ago listened in silence. Some wept, some cheered. All of them remembered their own slaughters, their own losses, their own helpless rage. We are not cattle, Yoonji continued. We are not resources. We are humanity. To the collective, we are coming for you, not for conquest, not for territory. We are coming because you taught us what you really are, and we do not let predators live. The message spread beyond collective space, reaching corners of the galaxy that had never heard of Earth. Civilizations watched the tiny blue planet with new eyes. Some saw an opportunity. Others saw a threat. But none of them could ignore what had happened. To every species they have harvested, suppressed, and slaughtered, Yoonji said, you are not alone anymore. Earth stands with you. And we have learned something your masters never wanted us to know. She paused, letting her words sink in across the stars. We are not refined. We are forged, and forged things do not break. They break others. Engineer Mireille was already building the next generation of ships, The Unbroken had survived the battle, but barely. It needed repairs that would take years. In the meantime, she designed something new, something bigger, something meaner. We were lucky, she told the engineering council. The collective underestimated us. They will not make that mistake again. The next fleet they send will be designed specifically to fight humans. Then, we designed something to fight that fleet, Hyok said. He had taken over military leadership after Dongsu's death. His scars had faded, but his anger had not. And when they counter our design, we designed something new. We keep evolving until they cannot keep up. That is the human way, Myre agreed. We adapt. They optimize. We can change faster than they can. The construction began immediately. New ships, new weapons, new strategies. But they also built something else. Communication networks that reached beyond their solar system. Messages sent to every world the collective had touched. The replies came slowly at first, then faster. Then too many to count. Dozens of species have been refined over thousands of years. Most had accepted their fate, becoming exactly what the collective wanted. Docile, obedient, afraid. But some had kept a spark of resistance burning in secret. And now that spark had something to feed on. A species called the Voran sent their military specifications. A race of silicon-based creatures offered resources. Even some members of the collective itself, species that had been conquered so long ago, they had forgotten freedom, began to question their masters. The galaxy was changing, and humanity was leading the change. Commander Yuna watched the new fleet take shape from the observation deck of the Unbroken II. It was larger than the original, designed by Murray to carry the war beyond Earth's solar system. Around it, hundreds of other ships were being assembled. Some were human designs. Others were gifts from new allies. Commodore Jisoo stood beside her, wearing a new uniform decorated with medals she did not remember earning. Her mechanical eye glowed faintly in the darkness. "What happens now?" Jisoo asked. It was the same question she had asked in the hospital, but now she meant something different. "Now we hunt," Yuna said. The collective ruled this galaxy through fear. They showed every species what happens to those who resist. We are going to show them what happens when someone resists and wins. That could take centuries. Yes, Yuna nodded slowly. It probably will. We might not live to see the end. Our children might not live to see the end. But eventually, the collective will fall, because we will never stop fighting. We will never stop hunting. We will never stop reminding the galaxy what happens when you try to refine humanity. The engines of the Unbroken II hummed to life. The fleet began to move, sliding out of Earth's orbit toward the stars beyond. Behind them, Earth was rebuilding. People were returning to the surface. Children were being born who would grow up under open skies instead of underground tunnels. Yuna looked at Jisoo, at the stars, at the future waiting for them. "They thought extinction would teach us obedience," she said quietly. "Instead, it taught us how to become the thing they feared most." "What is that?" Yuna smiled. It was the same cold, hard smile that Admiral Dongsu had worn 50 years ago when he promised the collective there would be no 18th refinement. Survivors with nothing left to lose. The fleet jumped to faster than light speed, vanishing from Earth's sky in a flash of light. The war was not over. The war had barely begun. But humanity was no longer fighting for survival. They were fighting for revenge. And they had all the time in the universe to get it done in the command center beneath Seoul, now a museum dedicated to the fallen. A recording played on repeat for visitors. It was Admiral Dongsu's final broadcast, made just before the Battle of Seoul. "They gave us 50 years to prepare. They thought we would waste it fighting each other, starving, dying slowly. They did not understand what they created. When you kill half a species and leave the rest alive, You do not create obedience. You create purpose. You create focus. You create something far more dangerous than any weapon. His voice echoed through the halls. You create humans with a reason to exist. And our reason is simple. We are done being refined. Now we refine others. Now we decide who lives and who dies. Now we remind the galaxy why they should have killed us all when they had the chance. The recording ended. The visitors left. And above the planet, the stars waited for humanity to come for them. They did not have to wait long.